Good morning. It's Saturday morning and it's a beautiful day. Started out at 54 degrees this morning, which is awesome. And again, I feel the breeze that God provides to me while I'm on the patio, and I just am so blessed by the breeze. Well, today we're going to be talking about whether Christians should be in contracts or covenants with other people or parties. So this is going to be part 3, session 2. And agreements are the core of every relationship created between human beings. And the power of agreement lies in human choice. So we have the choice of being in agreement with someone. So if you have your Bible, or if you want to write this down, you can look it up later. But write down or look up in the book of Amos, chapter 3, verse 3. And it says, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" And what that's referring to is, if you're walking together for the same goal, you have to be on the same page of agreement. I hear a lot of noise. Oh, someone's mowing their lawn up there. That's what's going on. Anyways, so in order to meet the same goal, you have to be walking the same path and have the same ideas of how to reach the goal. Because if your goal is to get to, let's say, the swimming pool, and you have a friend that's also wanting to get to the swimming pool that's walking with you, it wouldn't make sense for you to split ways and walk different ways trying to get to the same place. So I know that's a simple kind of example, but in order to meet the same goal, you have to kind of work together to get to the same goal. And that's an agreement. When you're walking together, it can just be a nonverbal agreement. The oldest and strongest bond possible between two parties is that of a blood covenant. And I know the Old Testament mentions a lot of blood covenants. There was a blood covenant between God and Abraham and many other people in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, Jesus made a blood covenant for us. And you can, all throughout the Bible, it's talked about the covenants, the blood covenants. And that's one of the strongest covenants. And also, Satan always tries to imitate everything that God creates. So Satan also makes blood covenants with the demons and with people in the world that are wanting more success and wanting more material things. He may make a blood covenant with them. And yes, that is real. It's not just in the movies, even though we see a lot of movies, horror movies and demonic movies. And just note that a lot of that stuff is not made up. It actually is real, and it's kind of based on real stuff. But anyways, that's another lesson. So covenants are the basis of relationship with supernatural kingdoms also. Satan tries, like I said, he tries to copy God's methods whenever possible, and his followers, such as his witches, are in covenant with him. Many of the entertainment people are in blood covenant with Satan as well. That's how they get a lot of their wealth and their fame, is they have a covenant with Satan. And it starts to show in their music. If you really kind of watch, I'm not mentioning any names. I don't think I have to, because if you're a true follower of Christ, you're going to know those that are demonic in their dress, in the way they present themselves, and in their music, or even actors, actresses. So the New Testament teaches to shun evil and to avoid those who are its carriers. And if you'll write down or turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Okay, that says, "Be not unequally yoked with the infidels," which are non-believers. "For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?" So light and darkness don't go together well. They both can't do the same. They can't meet the same goal, because the goal of light is to lighten everything up, to brighten everything. The goal of darkness is to make everything black and dark and to where you can't see. So they don't have the same goal. So what purpose would it be to yoke them like oxen are in a yoke? They have two oxen with a yoke over their necks to plow. So if you put light and darkness in there, they're not going to work together because they don't have the same goal. And so that's what it's kind of talking about, is we should not be yoked with someone who is, if we're followers of Christ, then we are the light. We should not be yoked with the darkness, or those that aren't following Christ. Now, that's not saying you can't talk with them. You can't be social. Is saying, like, having an agreement or a covenant or even a true friendship. We have to be careful because we don't want to bind ourselves to those that are not followers. Now, we can encourage them. We can pray for them. We can minister to them. But as far as bringing them up beside us as our best friend or, something like that, we need to be careful, because here that would be making them equally yoked with us. And what could happen is their darkness could overflow our light, which in many cases that does, unless you're extremely close to God and you have extreme strength and you can overcome them, which can happen. I'm not saying it can't, but more than likely, usually the darkness starts to overwhelm our flesh, so it's harder to fight darkness off of our flesh. So we need to really be careful who we're hanging out with and who we're making contracts with. We are to avoid all uncleanness. So if somebody's doing drugs all the time and you're a follower of Christ, that's not somebody you should be hanging out with. Yes, you can minister to them. Yes, you can check and see how they're doing. Definitely pray for them. But that's not someone we should be hanging out with all the time, because their demons could come attached to us and cause us problems. So that's something we need to stay away from. Okay, we are to keep ourselves pure, not only in mind, but also in body, that we may wholly be holy unto the Lord. And so that's also taking care of our bodies. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I had to go to the hospital because I had such inflammation throughout the left side of my body. I couldn't lift my shoulder or my arm, and I couldn't use my wrist. It was all inflamed, and my knee was inflamed, so I could barely walk. So I started, after going to the hospital, getting a shot to relieve the inflammation, I started researching on what I could do to not let this happen again, because that was extremely painful. And I saw that sugar is one of the worst enemies of inflammation. And yes, I liked my ice cream, my cookies, my chips, candy, yes. So I decided, well, because inflammation can affect my heart and my brain, I think I better do something to make myself physically fit for God. So I cut out sugar. I'm 2 weeks now into weaning myself off sugar. It was very difficult. I went through 2 days of sickness and headaches, but I'm going to really try to get this body, because I know I'm overweight. I know I'm not eating correctly. So I'm not wholly for God right now, because I'm working on it, though. I'm working on my diet. I'm working to get better physically. And that's something that we need to each do, is how can we take better care of ourselves, because our bodies are the temple of Christ. And if we're going to be ministering to others and showing them what Christians look like, we don't want to be so out of shape that we can barely walk, because that's not really a good witness. Especially if you're in the healing ministry, we want to also be healing ourselves, so that when we preach or we try to help others be healed, they're not looking at us thinking, well, I don't know, look at yourself. So that's something I'm trying to help myself. I'm trying to get myself healed. And there's a lot of flesh that I need delivered from. I have to start disciplining myself on certain things to eat, certain things to stay away from. So it's a battle, but I'm willing to do that battle. And I hope some of you will battle with me. So if we allow ourselves to bond with those that we know are engaging in sin, we become a partaker of their sin, and the evil spirits within them can easily pass to us. So, like I said, if we start hanging out with people that are drug addicts or alcoholics, if we hang out with them a lot while they're doing their activities, it's so easy for us to slip, because we are in the flesh. It's so easy for us to slip, especially if we used to drink in the past or we used to do drugs in the past. It's easy to just pick up that drink. Oh, well, one won't hurt me, one joint won't hurt me, or whatever it is that they call it now. But we need to really be careful in that. And it's not just the drugs that I'm talking about. It's like maybe a coworker cheats on his spouse. Well, you don't want to hang out with that coworker all the time, because that idea of cheating might come upon you, and you might feel like, well, it's okay to cheat on your person if you're married, or your partner, or whoever you're dating. So we need to be careful with who we're friends with and who we're engaging. And go ahead and look at Proverbs chapter 22, verses 24 through 25. Here it tells us, make no friendship with an angry man, neither go with the furious man, lest thou learn his ways and receive destruction to thy soul. So this is a warning in Proverbs to us that we should not befriend, or we shouldn't hang out with these people that have ways that are not godly. Like if someone is a rager or angry all the time, he definitely needs deliverance from that. But we can minister to them. Ministering to them and hanging out with them are two different things. So ministry, yes, minister to them, pray for them, but hanging out, being friends, just hanging out all the time with them, you're taking a chance of that spirit of anger getting onto you or bringing it home with you. So we need to listen to the wisdom that God is trying to give us, because he's already telling us that the ways of this person could destruct our soul, and our soul is our mental being, our emotional being. Okay, and we're not to have not to do with him that is not able to rule his affections, for he would hurt those by evil conversion. And then turn to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. I'll write that down for later. And it says, be sober and watch, for your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And so if we're drunk with alcohol or with drugs, or even in a food coma, or so bogged down with depression, or hyped up with anxiety that we can't think, because those are things also that we cannot be sober if we're all into the emotion or the mood. So we won't know that the enemy is around the corner waiting to jump on us. So he's giving us a warning that we need to try to keep our minds sober from all things, so that we are mindful of where the enemy is. And to be sober and watchful is to resist the cruel adversary and the cruelty of Satan, who seeketh by all means to devour us, is overcome by watchfulness and faith. So he can be overcome if we can already see his movements and his steps, because we are wiser than the enemy if we're using God's wisdom. Okay, now Romans chapter 1, verse 31. You can look at that, and that's a covenant breaker. And you can look at that later. I'm not going to read it right now, but it says, God takes covenants very serious, and we should always consult God before entering into any agreement with anyone, whether it be a car salesman, house salesman, or just a counseling even. We need to really seek God and ask, is this okay? Because I know that I have a ministry and I have people that sign release forms and it's all spelled out for them. Well, if you go to a secular counselor, they usually also have things for you to sign. You should be praying, even to come into my ministry. Lord, is this where you want me to receive my healing? And when you go to a secular counselor, Lord, is this where you want me to receive my healing? Because the only way that you're going to get the true healing is if it's the place where God is sending you to. God may not want you to come to my ministry because you may not be ready for it yet, or you may be beyond this, or something else might work better for you. So you really need to pray. Same with secular or other ministries. You need to pray, is this where you want me, Lord? And that's the same as being in a church. Before you become a member of a church, you need to ask, God, is this where you want me? Is this where I'm to be? So we need to always ask God before we sign any contract or make any verbal agreement. It's very important, because he knows where we need to be, and we need to be following his directions. If we make an agreement with an ungodly person, we also make an agreement with the God of the ungodly. So that's another thing. If you're going to a secular counselor or a secular doctor that does not believe in God, and you make an agreement to see them and take their treatments, you're also making an agreement with whoever they believe in, whoever is their God. And if they're an atheist, of course, then they don't believe in God. But they believe in something, though, because whatever is first in their life is their God. It could be a person, it could be alcohol, it could be anything. So whenever someone says they don't believe in God, there's still something that they're placing as God in their life. So just think on that whenever you're deciding on who to receive treatment from. if you can, always try to receive treatment from a Christian, a follower of Christ. Okay, and Amos 3:3 again talks about, if you cannot walk with a person in the same direction without an agreement. I'm going to stress that again. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 is another good one for you to look up. Proverbs 22, chapters 24 through 25. There are holy covenants and evil covenants. I think we kind of talked about that. And then in Hebrews 9:18, that talks about covenants need to be sealed. Many times blood was used to seal a covenant, and the reason for that is blood carries life. There's life in blood. And then Hebrews, I'm just giving you these so that you can look them up later. And Hebrews, let's see where I'm at, chapter 12, verse 24 is another good one for you to look up. Entering an evil covenant opens doors for demons as well. So this is another reason why it's so important that we make sure of who we're making a connection with, an agreement with, or a contract with, covenant with. Even if it's verbal, you want to make sure that you're not agreeing with something evil. And these covenants carry down to the next generation unless God breaks them through the name of Jesus. So if you have already made agreement or covenant or contract with someone who is ungodly, you can still have that broken by confessing it to God, repenting, and asking Him to break that tie. Anything God is not part of, it belongs to Satan. So if God is not part of the contract, then Satan is. So always remember, if God's not in it, then Satan is. So look at all things. Is God in this? Okay, He's not, then I don't want to be part of that. We must ask God to show us all evil covenants that we are part of so that they may be broken. So we may not even realize that something may be evil. So we need to ask the Holy Spirit to reveal these to us, to reveal any contracts, whether they be verbal or written down. If we have any connected to any ungodly people, they need to be broken. And did you know that sex is a form of a covenant? You can see this in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 15 through 16. Sex is definitely a covenant, and that's why it's so hard to break the tie after you have sex with someone. They become part of your soul, and it's a very strong soul tie. So that's why the Bible's always telling you, sex, wait for marriage for sex, because it's not something easy to break that contract, even though you might have meant it for a one-night stand. And what exactly is a covenant? Okay, covenant, I looked it up, is terms laid down for a relationship and promises given as benefits. And what is a power of agreement? The power of agreement shows you how to have this kind of unity in all of your relationships. This kind God desires for each of us. The kind He uses to change our lives so that we have a lasting impact in the lives of people around us. So as you go through the day to day and through the week and through your life, start thinking about the contracts, the agreements, the covenants that you may have entered into or are being presented with, and start praying to see if this is something you should do before you do it. I hope this has benefited all of you and things that you should or should not do. Again, you have the choice to make the decision whether you're going to be in contract or not. I just pray that you pray for wisdom before doing it. And the next session, we're going to be talking about secrets in different organizations and whether those are good or not. So I hope you join us next time, and I will try to make it sooner than later. And may God bless you, make His face shine upon you, be gracious upon you. Enjoy your week. Thank you.